for us to do something that is not remotely prudent, but here we are doing it anyway. Look, we put it all on the line for you guys, and we have some definite shared thoughts. Weirdly, we have the same lineup prediction. Yeah. Charlie tells you we spent too much time together, or that we're right. Maybe that too.
Maybe we're just right. Okay, our number 4 choice coming out of Iowa, this is probably our most controversial, is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And we're going to explain why. So, I mean, the first poll, the last poll that we have, Data for Progress with Civics, shows Biden at a 15% threshold. From political insiders that Krystal and I have talked to, lots of different campaigns have said that he has got the weakest organization. He's not doing well in the state. He's only been able to muster 1,000 people at most. That's a third of what Sanders and Buttigieg have been able to do. He doesn't have any of the fundamentals that you need for truly the most organizational caucus or the most organizational contest in this entire election. And for me, that just shows you that there's a lot of his ceiling is overestimated, his support is overestimated because of that, and I don't think he's going to be able to show up tonight.
Look, you pointed this out earlier in the show. It's all about the trend lines, right? And Biden has been completely stagnant, even as voters have started to make their final decisions. You've seen other campaigns come up. You've certainly seen Sanders surging. There seems to be a coalescing around him, and they are passing Biden by. So there's no indication that in the final days, including up till today, when voters are making their last picks, that they're going to come home to Biden. It looks much more like he has this sort of hard ceiling of support that he's not moving beyond. I have literally not talked to a single person on the ground who didn't say that of the top campaigns, his is the weakest organizationally on the ground, and that matters a lot. Remember, we covered early in the campaign how his Iowa director didn't even live in Iowa. So they've been downplaying expectations here for a while. Fourth, will it be fourth for sure? We don't know, but it certainly looks like the fundamentals are fairly weak for him.
Like you said, let's bet on trends. What are the trends? The economy seems well on the front, but overall not doing so well. People are generally dissatisfied with the Obama era. People have severely overestimated his ability to beat Trump. We've seen in his head-to-head matchups, Krystal, that he's basically tied with Sanders for how he does in head-to-head matchups.
He is at this point.
Trump, and he's dropped significantly. All of the overall trend lines for Joe Biden are going down, so I think that there's a lot of soft support sitting in there, and he's not. And
we should add the Trump campaign's been running a lot of ads against him, especially digital ads that he really hasn't matched because he doesn't have the fundraising resources to be able to match it. So, all right, that's our big bold choice. Number 3. Now, this is also controversial. Okay, number 3. This is the one I'm probably the least certain of. The number 2 and number 3 positions. We put Pete at number 3. And I'll tell you, I feel like he has really had some of his thunder stolen by, number 1, impeachment.
Yes.
Because people just weren't talking about the race. It kind of happened at a bad point where he had come down in the polls and he hasn't been able to recover. I also think that the billionaires in the race, Bloomberg in particular, have sort of stolen some of his momentum. So the elite backers, Pete has a lot of billionaire wealthy backers behind him. Look, they've got another option now down the road that they feel comfortable with. So I just don't feel like in the closing days he's been able to really pull it together in order to get himself over the top.
I think that's right. I mean, Bloomberg and Steyer have cut into so much of his support. Amy Klobuchar kind of revealed him to be a farce, on the debate stage. There were many different things that undercut the Pete Buttigieg thing. And overall, Iowa voters are smart. They look at the polls and they see that he's got 3% support in South Carolina with black voters. And they say, you know what, man, I can't vote for you because if I do, I'm basically throwing my vote away on a guy who's going to lose the nomination. And so with that electability, he doesn't have the same change message. A lot of the media, he was a media creation from the start, and he got that media attention taken away from him. Overall, the other thing is with him, even though he might look well in a poll, second choice support, I don't see it for Pete. I don't see a lot of people going to Pete as their second choice, as somebody to beat Donald Trump. I see them going from Pete to somebody else, or at the very least, just staying with him. So that's why I think he's going to come in third.
Well, and that brings us to our number 2 pick, which you've probably guessed by now is Elizabeth Warren. And again, for me, these are the 2 that I'm the least certain of because Pete has shown some momentum in terms of energy on the ground. But again, let's talk about the trend lines. If we look over the last couple of weeks, it looks like Warren has recovered a bit from her lowest point. And as we know, her coalition usually takes directly from Pete. So some of the closing polls had her coming up a bit. I think she has recovered a bit, enough to get second and could end up coming out of Iowa. You know, the media, if she gets second, it'll be all about Warren momentum. That'll be the trend line.
She's in a good position for second choice. She's got the electability argument. She has the progressive plans, which people, particularly upper middle class white liberals in Iowa, love about Elizabeth Warren. And the other thing is organization. She has a fantastic organizational game. We've been hearing it on this show for almost a year now, right? Like, everybody's been saying, Elizabeth Warren's got a fantastic ground game. She had that early money she invested massively in organizers. That's ultimately what this is all about, and that's why I think she could come and say, I agree. I mean, Warren and Pete really are the ones who are going to flip. But
yeah, and I think whoever ends up second between the two of them, there'll be a big media hype around, even though their case for further down the road doesn't actually look all that great. But I think you'll see a momentum narrative for whoever comes in second. Right. And that brings us to our number one pick, Saagar.
That's right. I think Bernie's going to win. I think he's going to win the Iowa caucuses. I mean, he's just got massive amounts of support. The energy on the ground is absolutely ridiculous. It's an organizational game. In terms of the college support, I mean, his team has played this very, very. It's a revolution in campaign affairs, because what it is they said screw. The mainstream media said screw you, and they said screw you right back. They don't need them. They built alternative media channels. They built college infrastructure, Latino infrastructure. Chuck Rocho was on the show talking about this, hyper targeting each person, using young people, using the internet to create a grassroots funded campaign, the likes of which we have not yet seen and will change the game forever. I do think he's going to win because of that.
You know, there is a lot of, we talked about the sort of 2008 parallels where Biden feels like a lot of Hillary 2008 energy, and Bernie really feels like Obama 2008 energy. There's this sense of, this is the team you want to be on. This is the team that's ascendant. These are the people that are having fun. They're the ones that are, breaking convention and breaking records, and Sanders has become this sort of cultural icon figure in the same way, in a very different type of icon figure, but in a similar way to what Barack Obama did. So I think they surged at the right moment. Their vaunted ceiling evaporated. They don't have a ceiling. They keep garnering more and more support. They've especially coalesced the progressive lane and sort of unified progressives behind Bernie Sanders. I think he's going to have a very good night tonight. I mean, ironically, impeachment has actually helped him, because it froze the race in place at a point when he was doing incredibly well, and it made it so that it was very hard for establishment attacks to sort of break through and land in the final week, even though they did try. But they weren't able to break through with impeachment coverage. I think it worked out for him.
And it's funny, I was looking at a graphic that showed we had the least amount of network television coverage of a presidential primary heading into Iowa. That's because of impeachment, and ultimately that helps insurgent candidates, because that means people who are getting their news and are organizing on the internet are the ones who are ascendant.
I also wanted of the top four, he is the least dependent on the media, because he had to build an alternative infrastructure, just like Andrew Yang had to build an alternative infrastructure, which is why, by the way, I do think Yang will outperform predictions tonight.
I want to make sure that we give a shout out to Andrew Yang, who I do predict will have a huge show up tonight. He's going to stun everybody. I think he could hit up to 10% in some of these precincts, and I do think he's going to come out of Iowa with at least a few delegates. So he's not going anywhere. I do think that he's going to show up and massively outperform his polls.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we put it all on the line there. You guys can judge.
Could be wrong.
Tomorrow.
We'll see.
All right or wrong, we are. Remember to join us here tonight. We're going to be doing live coverage from 9 to 11 with reports on the ground and some of our favorite guests in studio to tell us what is going on. So tune in here later today. We'll see you guys soon.
See you later.